Yep, I think it's on. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. It's been a little while, but I wanted to come back and do a topic that I wanted to talk about, and this one's going to be a little bit more of a narrow focused episode. And in this case, I'm just going to get to the point as quickly as possible, and give my feelings about this. I've seen a lot of the videos online of people talking about physical media and the importance of physical media. And I wanted to give my 2 cents as well because it's like, fuck it, I have an RSS link. And I wanted to actually give, you know, I wanted to at least say why I feel like physical media is important. I mean, there's plenty of legitimate reasons why physical media is important, but the most important is historical preservation. That's what comes first, is that even though yes, you can have internet and you can have hard drive backups and that kind of thing, sometimes you'll need internet to download that stuff. Sometimes there's outstanding circumstances, or if you're one of those doomsday prepper types, what if the blackout happens and there's no more internet, but you do have electricity? You can plug it in that circumstance. With what I mean by preservation is that when it's uploaded to a streaming service and not released on a physical disc, it could disappear, and who knows? Who knows if they'd ever bring it back again? Um, there's a show on HBO called Vinyl, which had its first episode directed by Martin Scorsese, but that show is now no longer available to watch because the rights fees became too much for HBO, and they didn't want to keep paying the actors and the directors and all that stuff. And so they're just like, we're just going to take it off the service. And yeah, you can still buy it. Excuse me. You can still buy it digitally online, but I mean, that's a ticking clock as well because you don't know how long your library is going to last. PlayStation recently was going to take away people's library of Discovery TV shows. Then now they say they aren't, but they sort of phrased it in such a way where it's like, we might do it again in the future, basically, but we're not going to do it right now because everybody had such a big blowback about it. But that's the sad reality, is that eventually the blowback isn't going to matter as much and people will lose stuff that they paid money for. There's movies that I have digitally that I don't have physically, and there's the potential of those movies just no longer being there. And that's sort of why I went away from digital copies, because for a while I was really swept up with apps with Vudu. That's the one that I use, is that you could get these movies on super cheap sales, like $5 and stuff like that. But I found that that caused me to buy things that maybe I didn't need to. Like it makes sense when, if it's a movie that I want to see and I haven't seen it and it costs $3 to rent it, but it's on sale for $5, well then yeah, I'm just going to drop the $5 and get it. That's not like a huge deal to me. But if it's more to buy the movie than it is to rent the movie, then I'll just rent it. Um, but there are movies that I have in my collection because they're over time. It's like, oh, that was a good sale. That was something that was happening. But I moved away from that because who knows if those copies will be there. And also another big point about physical media is that we still don't have lossless audio, and we still don't have perfect 4K video. And that's because of two different issues. First of all, the audio. The audio is on a disc is remastered from the original camera negative, or if it's a recent movie, the digital audio file is upgraded and spruced up and released on a 4K disc. But on the streaming service, it won't be that way. You won't have a lossless audio experience. You won't have a perfect audio experience in in that circumstance. And even though you might, and I've heard people say this before, where, well, I don't have to worry. I have high speed internet. It's not about high speed internet. Like, even if you have amazing internet, the changes in bit rate, which affects audio and video, it's basically just bit rate is basically the information that, that is transferred from the server and back to where you're streaming it. When you're watching something, like if I, like me here on this laptop, if I click here and watch something on Netflix, it goes to a server connected to Netflix that has the audio file. And in the process of bringing it to and fro that distance, even though there might not be any major issues, there'll still be potential issues. How many people have watched stuff on Netflix and suddenly it becomes like pixelated quality, like really like bad pixel quality? Well, that's happened to all of us because that's streaming services. They can't have perfect one-to-one stuff. And that's also a reason why whenever Netflix releases a show on, or a movie on physical disc, I try to get it. I don't have everything, obviously. I don't have The Irishman, for example, but I try to at some point get it, because when Netflix releases something physically, that means, you can keep it and hang on to it forever. I still like having the first two seasons of Stranger Things over there on my back shelf on Blu-ray. Um, and those are the ones that are designed like VHS cases. Um, but Netflix doesn't want people doing physical copies. In fact, like, they program those Stranger Things discs to make you almost not want to watch it that way, because when you put in season 1, disc 1, and say you haven't seen the show before, you're immediately given a trailer for season 2, and a probably the most major spoiler that you could have of season 1 is right there in a baked in ad on the disc that you can't skip. That's another big thing. They make it so you can't skip it. And so that you're kind of like, well, I don't want to see that. I don't want to do that. How about we just try again with Netflix or something like that? And that's what they're banking on, is that even when they put out the discs, they're making it a little inconvenient, at least with their discs, not with The Irishman, because The Irishman is being released through Criterion Collection, and Criterion Collection are people who actually give a shit about these things. So it's going to be good quality. It's not going to have baked in ads that spoil things in the movie. It's going to be well produced when it's Criterion Collection. But when it's Netflix produced, the discs can be back and forth. But even still, I try to get it. I recently got a 4K disc of All Quiet on the Western Front, for that reason as well, because that's just such a dope movie, and I don't want to see it potentially disappear off Netflix, which is something that could very well happen, because again, Netflix decides, well, do we want to keep paying to have it on here? And it depends also on the deal that they made with the makers of the show. So there is that. Um, Discs are convenient, however, piracy is unfortunately becoming more and more prominent because it is really more convenient and cheaper. That's the bigger thing, is that it's the cheaper option. Because, if you want to talk about straightforward, I consider, going to the store and buying a disc to be as straightforward as it is, but that costs. That costs the gas to go to the store, that costs the money to get the disc, and you obviously have to have a player and a TV in order to watch it. A player. Of course, you got to have a TV to watch anything, but you have to have a Blu-ray player in order to watch it. So there is a little bit of an expense, and that does lead people to piracy. But it ends up becoming this sort of back and forth thing where, you know you don't want to give money to these greedy corporate people, but then you also screw over the creative people who are actually just trying to do good and trying to do their job. And it's one of those things. And what I always say is that I'm not going to go into a whether or not you should pirate or not. I'm not going to try to do like moral grandstanding or anything like that. I do have an opinion about, piracy, and, I'm a big believer of not doing it. And if you're not able to watch a movie, then just save your money and wait till it comes out, and you can watch it in an official capacity, because at least you're supporting the filmmakers that way. But that's a little sidetracked. At the end of the day, people are still they're still going to pirate. They're still going to download. They're still going to do that because it's cheaper, it's more convenient. But with a physical disc, it's I wouldn't necessarily say. I mean, we know about lossless audio and stuff like that, but whether or not it's convenient to pirate it versus convenient to get the disc is up to a lot of people. And I guess that's what I was getting to, is that it could, at the end of the day, that's up to you. But you know, I just personally find the discs easier to get. I'd rather have a physical copy or just wait. And when, but like my I guess what I was trying to get to with piracy is that it's not going away, it's not going to disappear, but I also think that if it's something that you really like, and something you really care about, a movie that you love, a TV show that you love, and there's a physical disc of it, I think that's the time where you should get a physical copy. If you love the original Frozen, then god damn it, I think you should go out and get a 4K copy of the original Frozen. Hell, I have a 4K copy of Frozen. Like, if you like that movie, don't rely on Disney Plus to hold on to it for you, because they're not going to. Because what we're seeing with all these different like shows and movies that are being divided based on streaming services. There's plenty of hilarious videos out there pointing out how absurd it is. There's a whole website dedicated to watching the original Pokemon series, because it's like Netflix is this season, and then this streaming service is this season, and then the freebie is this season, and it gets convoluted. And if there was and with the case with Pokemon, I would almost say piracy at that point, because as far as I know, getting physical discs of Pokemon is really hard to get. And if they weren't hard to get, I would say you should just go get those. But when it's something that they're making it that convoluted, then it's perfectly logical for the audience to turn to piracy and alternative measures. And these streaming services are compensating by putting it on the consumer. We recently got the announcement that Netflix is getting rid of their cheapest option that they had available to have it ad free. And now you have to pay, like, I think it's like $15.50 a month for Netflix. They're putting the price on the consumer. They're like, basically, okay, everybody's pirating stuff. Less people are going to be doing our stuff. Well, we're just going to charge the people who are here more money to make up for that, and it's going to draw less people, and then they're going to increase. And a lot of people are like, well, it's going to draw people away, why are you increasing the prices? That's why. If everyone's going to pirate everything, and you don't care whether it's something you like or not, and you're just going to pirate it, then they don't know, they're just going to keep making shitty TV shows that nobody watches. But then they can also make something that is worth watching by you putting your money where your mouth is, by either getting the disc copy, or if there's no disc copy, then subscribing to the streaming service for the duration of time that it takes you to watch the whole series. It it's one of those things where I wish people would take the smaller people on the film productions into consideration when, when there's an option, a reasonable option to get a legal copy, then go with that. Like Cowboy Bebop, there's a easy Blu-ray that you can go out and buy for like $40. It's great, and you can watch the entire Cowboy Bebop original TV show. And when situations like that, then if If you pirate Cowboy Bebop, then I think that's kind of shitty, because Cowboy Bebop is a show that does deserve having a physical copy, or at least you putting in the $10 to watch it on Crunchyroll. It's one of those. It's, I'm not, and then again, I'm not. I not again, but I want to say that I'm not saying this because I'm defending producers, because I think producers can be, they've been funding a lot of garbage and a lot of stuff that isn't so great, but in order to tell them, hey, we want better shit, then we need to vote with our wallets, spend the money, get that physical copy. And another big thing about having a physical copy is that you have legal claim to that movie. No, it's when they take something away, like what I was talking about with Discovery, when they take something away on Discovery or whatever Discovery shows, when they take anything off of it, you can't do anything because that's their right to take it off of it. But if you have a physical copy of the show or the movie, they can't just knock on your door and say, "Hey, we want that copy back. That belongs to us. We're doing another version." George Lucas can't show up at my door to take away my DVDs of the original theatrical trilogy. He wants those versions to disappear into the nether forever, but he can't show up at my door and take those away from me. They can not have them on Disney Plus, which is what they do now, which they have the modern updated versions of Star Wars on there now, but the physical like copies of the theatrical versions, um those belong to me, even though I don't obviously own the rights to Star Wars. That's not what I'm saying. Is that I have legal ownership of these discs. These discs belong to me. Nobody can take that away from you like they can with the streaming. Like, even if you buy the thing, they can just make it disappear. Bye bye. No longer have it anymore. Sucks to be you, nerd. It's frustrating, and the cure for that is physical media. And another thing with the piracy thing, where do you think those pirates get some of those high quality copies, especially later in a movie's lifespan? If you go on that website right now and you watch Oppenheimer, where do you think they got that high quality copy? It's more than likely, especially recently, it probably came from a Blu-ray rip. It's just, even if you're a piracy person, even I think even you would want physical media to at least still exist and still be around, because then at least it's much easier to get true high quality stuff that, like, if you stream from one of these piracy websites, then there's all kinds of data and packet loss. But if you're technically downloading a full on Blu-ray file that's a proper rip scan, that's almost as good as watching it on a Blu-ray. Like, there's no real discrepancy there, especially if it's like downloaded on your SSD hard drive and you're watching it on your screen. That's pretty close. But the point is that physical media still has to exist in order for that pirated copy. So even on that level, that still needs to exist. Um, certain bonus features are not available on streaming, or alternate versions are not available on streaming. An example for alternate versions, the original theatrical version of Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. If you go to the different streaming services, they all have the R-rated version, which is the one where there's these black silhouettes getting involved, of any sexual stuff, any sexual content whatsoever. It's like these figures are standing conveniently in the way so that you don't see anything. That's the version that's on all of the streaming services. But if you have a physical disc, then you can watch the uncut version, which is still, as far as streaming services, there it's not available. The only streaming option that I've seen officially for the uncut version of Eyes Wide Shut is if you buy a digital copy and then connect it to Disney Movies Anywhere, which is Disney's service that allows you to have all your digital movies in one place in exchange for them basically being able to sell your data to advertisers. but it gives you the convenience of being able to watch certain movies that you bought on Vudu on YouTube, for example. Um, with Eyes Wide Shut, the Disney Movies Anywhere streaming app that they have has the uncut version, the proper uncut version. And so that's the only way to stream it, but that involves buying a digital copy, buying a digital R-rated version on, say, Vudu, and then connecting the account and doing that. That's kind of silly. I mean, at this point, especially with the Eyes Wide Shut example, it's a $10 Blu-ray. You can order it on Amazon and call it a day. And to me, that's more convenient in that case. Um, it depends on the movie, but sometimes movies that have bonus features on disc won't have those bonus features on streaming. Now, if it's a modern release like the Batman, for example, you'll get all those bonus features on streaming and otherwise. But not every movie has that. I think I'm trying to think of an example. Um, some of the Bruce Lee movies, no bonus features. At least on streaming, I mean. But on like the physical disc, there's all the bonus features where you get all the commercials and all the different retrospectives about Bruce Lee and his influence, and you even get a compilation of trailers of people doing knockoff versions of Bruce Lee for their own movie, which is a big thing at the time, Bruce exploitation. But anyway, those bonus features are on that disc, and you know, not available on a lot of other places. And there might be pirates out there, but I mean, I don't see as much piracy about bonus features because it seems like a lot of the people who pirate don't really care as much about bonus features. It's just one of those things. You have to almost go out of your way to find those bonus features. Um, I mentioned this earlier, but and I have bullet points written down here. Um, Buying a physical copy sends a message to the studios and the producers that this is what I want. They took note of everything everywhere all at once. All the tickets that they sold and the Blu-rays the physical copies they bought. That send a message saying, "Hey, give us more content like this." And if it's a streaming only show, the only way to do it would be to watching it. But if there's a physical copy available, like physical copy is the ultimate way to support something. 4K Blu-rays is like, at least with the music equivalent, getting a vinyl record. Like the vinyl record is a certain aesthetic quality, but when you buy a vinyl record, more of your money goes to the original artist than if you were to buy a CD or a stream of the same song. Movies are a similar thing where they get the filmmakers get a piece based on percentages of copies sold, and if a ton of copies, like for example Oppenheimer selling out in 4K, that sends a message saying, hey, people want 4K of this, and now you can go and get Oppenheimer in 4K and there's no real issues or any hassle. But when it first came out, they weren't ready for it because they thought, who gives a shit? But there is a market for this, and I think they finally realized that there is a market for this. And and with streaming, you don't know what they will do to it. Like I mentioned, how the video and audio quality aren't quite as good because of bit rates. The visual discrepancy between servers, but there's also the potential censorship, like with what I was talking about with Eyes Wide Shut, not being able to get the uncut version versus the R-rated version, or with Peacock. Peacock has WWE content on it, and they have older WrestleManias. So there's some stuff from those older WrestleManias that they've cut out and removed because it's not politically correct anymore. And while it's obviously not, like, some of that content's not, it's not like it needs to exist for historical purposes, not because of not because of, oh, that's what I want to see. I'm not saying it from that perspective, but example, WrestleMania 6, Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown, a match that's completely cut out of the Peacock version because Roddy Piper is painted in half blackface. Now, I'm not saying that's a great thing that he's painted in half blackface, but that happened and they broadcasted that. And so to pretend that they didn't broadcast that and they didn't do that is kind of an insult. You're trying to change history. You're not trying to prompt a conversation saying, that's not okay. This isn't something that we should be this isn't something that we should repeat. Instead, it's just like, let's just not have it there and let's just not have it come up. And that's physical media. They can't take that away. I have my WrestleMania anthology box set. So if I want to watch Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown at WrestleMania 6, I can. And and it should be available even if it's not politically correct, because you can't just ignore that that's what history was. That was a part of history, and you can't just pretend that it didn't happen. And censorship, or hell, not even necessarily censorship, having the original theatrical versions of Star Wars, like George Lucas has been actively trying to get rid of those. And he only gave it on a DVD because so many people were crying about it. And the DVD sold like hotcakes and for many years, but then he immediately discontinued it. And then he put out the Blu ray and the 4K versions, which were his updated versions. And there's no intention on remastering the 4K from the original camera negative. And so the only real leftover evidence of the original theatrical versions and what they looked like are those DVDs and rips of those DVDs that exist online. Though that's the way that you can actually see Star Wars, how it was presented to its audiences back in 1977, 1980, and 1983 with the original Star Wars trilogy. And physical media is so, like, even though it's just a disc, the idea that it represents, you having physical ownership, you having it not being able to be taken away from you, you not having to rely on a streaming service to have that movie that you like so much on there for you, it's just one of those things that it it needs to exist. It needs to not go away. And we are seeing it go away more and more often with stuff like BestBuy.com deciding to remove their stock. Other stores like Target are reducing their stock more and more. At my Target store, they added more books because I guess they think they're going to sell more books than Blu-rays at this point, which is, it's just wild. It's convenience of a generation of being able to have everything at their fingertips. It's left people spoiled and not wanting to spend the money to go out and actually get something and get the physical disc of it. And I'm not necessarily, I'm again, I don't blame people for piracy. There's factors that I wish they considered when they did it. And even if you pirate something, if it's something you really like, then consider still buying a copy. So you can send that, like I was talking about, you can send that message to the executive saying, "Hey, this is my money and this is what I will spend it on. And now that I have this disc, you can't take it away from me." And so physical media is just one of those things that is absolutely so important that it needs to exist. And even if it gets smaller, which is what's going to do now, it's going to get smaller and become a niche. But and I don't think it will honestly go away completely. It's just, I just wish more people I wish more people were more willing to get physical media, to get physical copies. But unfortunately people aren't, unfortunately. But again, it's not like it's their fault. It's one of those convenience things. It's inconvenient to spend the money and have to go out and do that. And it's inconvenient to subscribe to these streaming services when they're not even going to fully have what you want on there. And so it creates this situation where, you have you don't want to give money to people who don't deserve it, but also you also think that the okay, I phrased that wrong. I need to rephrase it. If you if you get a physical copy of, say, Jaws, you can always have that minutia of looking at the disc and looking at the back of it, and on the back there might be a little blurb from a news article, and that might prompt you to look at articles about Jaws. With Blu-rays, there's a physical connection to what you're, not only the disc itself, but you end up having a bit more of a connection to what you're watching. It's not just it's the act of taking the disc out and putting it in, and that feeling of this is the best quality, this is how it's supposed to look, this is how it's supposed to sound, this is how it's supposed to feel. And that is another reason that physical media is great, and it's very important. And and I wish executives would be more willing to take risks and be more willing to put out their shows on physical media. I wish people who pirate would consider other factors and other things that go into film production besides the producers at the top, who seem to be the figurehead positions. And the only way to the only way to prompt it is to prompt a discourse, because again, I'm not trying to make this as an attack on people who pirate. It's a symptom of convenience. It's not somebody's fault that it's easier to do this than to do this. That's logical, that's sensical, that makes sense. So again, this isn't a come after of people who pirate things necessarily, because there's also plenty of shows and movies. A movie example is Rock and Rule, which is this obscure Canadian animated movie. The only way to watch that legally and officially is a $200 DVD online, and that's just ridiculous. So that's a case where you shouldn't feel bad about pirating that. But if something is readily available on a physical disc that you can go to your store and easily buy, I think you should consider that option. That's I just think that if it's something you really like, and if you know you're really gonna like it, like if it's a Christopher Nolan or a Martin Scorsese movie, and you're just like, I know I'm gonna want to watch this, then s- put in that effort and go out and get a physical copy. And in exchange, in turn, the media landscape that we'll live in will honestly be a better place, filled with producers who are more willing to take creative risks on movies, and they will benefit from taking that risk by, in turn, people getting physical copies, and that's hopefully how we get a positive cycle in this. um but yeah, I mean, that essentially covers everything I wanted to talk about with physical media. I just didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't. There's a lot of thoughts, a lot of stuff that I wanted to hash out in my head and just do it in a physical audio talking sense, like we are right now. Um, and it makes me hope that if you see this, it'll make you at least consider going out and getting that Blu-ray of that movie that you really, really love. And you can bring it home, you unpackage it, you look at the disc, you put it in, and you have more of a connection to what you're watching. And it might affect you in a different way, or in a way that you didn't quite expect. I know that sounds grandiose, but I truly believe that there is a difference between the physical effort of putting in the disc and your connection to what you're watching versus you hitting the button on the remote and clicking on something, or clicking on something because, oh, the picture might look nice, and then you get a little brief little blurb description on, and then maybe you want to watch it, maybe you don't. It's not as connected. It just feels like it's a big blah. But when you have the disc, it's like, it's this movie. I'm watching this right now. I'm going to put the disc in. We're going to watch it and enjoy films and enjoy movies and, you know, enjoy an art form that I absolutely love, so much. And it's not just movies though. That's another thing, is that video games are even more affected by this than even movies. Like, movies generally, at least usually, have some kind of release, even on VHS, even if it's on a VHS tape. But with games, games will disappear forever, and we have no way to historically preserve those unless there's physical discs that exist that allow you to play it. I have a physical, well, I have a disc of Jump Force, which is a fighting game that's no longer able to be purchased. But if you put in the disc, you can keep playing it. And for historical significance, these games, these movies, these songs, these pieces of art need to be preserved and not at risk of being taken away and put behind a paywall, or it being distorted from a lack of good audio quality or internet issues. You just have the disc and you put it in and you watch and you enjoy. Um, but that's enough rambling out of me. I think everybody's gotten the point here. I won't go on for too long, but I thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this show. If you would like to support the show, feel free to go to my Patreon page. You can find it at the link tree. The link tree will be in the description of this video, and you can go there and you can check out my merch. You can check out the Patreon. You can check out all my social medias. I have a button icon for all the public social media platforms that I'm on. You can follow me on there. Um, I plan on doing episodes in the future, just more infrequently. I think I was trying to keep up with a format that I wasn't ready for, and I needed to be more off the cuff. Like with this, this is something that I actually wanted to really talk about and sink my teeth into. Um, and something that I could give my 2 cents on, since I love movies and it's one of the things I live by. I love movies and I love video games, and I'm a big history person, and that sort of combines with, historic historical significance, preserving media, making sure something doesn't become lost because of deterioration, because of time. People forgot. There's not an audio file. Not an audio file. There's not a file online that you can download. Physical media is how this shit doesn't disappear forever. Anyway, that's enough of me. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope everybody has a great day or evening whenever you're watching this. If you like the show, feel free to follow me on whatever audio podcasting platform is your favorite. If you like more of this content, feel free to give it a like wherever. Give it a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. All that fun stuff that you've heard, you know, 2 dozen times probably already, just here at the end of the day. Anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna leave you guys be. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next show, whenever that'll be. I'll announce it on one of my socials, which you can also find on my link tree. Anyway, next episode, I'll let you guys know. Check out my link tree for all my social media, Patreon, merch, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, y'all.